Um, my name is Charlene Easton. I'm Manager in Regulatory Affairs at the NWMO, and I'm really happy to be here. I just want to thank City of Dryden for inviting me here today. So I'm going to be presenting on the results of the economic development studies. I just want to start with some key messages, and I'll come back to those messages throughout the presentation. So basically, the studies show us that the project will be a catalyst for growth for Ignace in the region over a long period of time. There will be economic diversification and skills training benefiting all. And in order to really optimize the benefits and the opportunities provided by the APM project, it will require us to work together throughout the region. We begin the studies with the 2020 Ignace Community Wellbeing Visioning process. This process involved engagement with the community over a period of time. What you see here on the slide are the sort of the composite illustration of the summary of the vision. The 4 pillars to the right, people, infrastructure, community study, community and culture, and economic finance, are the basis of 11 community studies that we conducted over the course of the last year with the Ignace Township of Ignace. I'm going to focus today on the last pillar, the economic pillar. To drill down on the vision for economic development in Ignace, we have 3 things that they have aspirations for: to enhance support and diversify the local businesses, to increase business activity and employment opportunities, and to increase household income through employment, contracting, and associated project opportunities. So these aspirations are quite common in the broader region, including Dryden in terms of wanting to grow and diversify its economy, and really speaks to the opportunity for us to align and work together to achieve benefits from the project. All of the community studies have a similar structure and purpose. The community studies ultimately are designed to inform the APM hosting agreement between NWMO and the Township of Ignace, as well as they provide pertinent information for other agreements, such as the agreement with the City of Dryden. The studies are going to all tell us what are the existing underlying conditions of the baseline without the APM project. They then look at what kind of changes would occur as a result of the project and look at assessing options for optimizing those benefits and mitigating any impacts. What the studies are not, and it's important to note, they are not impact effects studies done to the requirements of the Impact Agency of Canada. Those studies will be undertaken once we've selected a host community in 2024. I have a deck here that combines 4 studies, economic studies, shown here in the illustration. And these were done by 3 independent consulting firms. And I just want to put a plug in for tonight. We're having a Meet the Experts panel, and the authors of the studies will be at that. And when I say we, it's run through the Ignace CLC. And if you have further questions coming out of my presentation, there's an opportunity for you to join us tonight and talk to the experts. And all of the what I'm going to do is present to you the current economic profile, opportunities linked to the project, and the assessment options that came out of the combined 4 studies. A little bit about the project. By way of setting context, it's a large infrastructure project with current day value of approximately $26 billion. It will handle all of Canada's used nuclear fuel. It will involve DGR and an off-site center of expertise. The Center of Expertise will have an administrative office, and it will be located in Ignace. Its time span is 167 years, with critical dates including site selection in 2024. First, 2028 is when we're anticipating having this COE constructed and the beginning of having our administrative offices in the location. And then between 2033 and 2042, we'll have a construction when the DGR and on-site facilities will be built. And in 2043, operations begin. These are the temporal boundaries that we use in terms of binding our studies that we look at, and you'll see that later on in the presentation. The other binding element is geographical. So I'm going to be referring throughout the studies to two study areas. The local study area, shown here on this map. It's essentially based on a 1-hour commute to the Revel site, and it includes Sioux Lookout, Mayshon, Dryden, Ignace, as well as the unincorporated municipalities. Then we also have a spatial boundary associated with a regional study area. So this regional study area goes out as far as Winnipeg and Timmins and Sudbury. I spoke earlier about the construction phase, and we do anticipate that labor for the underground mining will be drawn from as far away as Sudbury and Timmins, as well as some of the supply chain. So we have a much broader regional study area. So these are just terminologies and planning assumptions underpinning the studies that you'll need to understand as I go through the studies. The presentation is in 3 distinct sections. The first one is going to look at jobs, and it combines the labor and workforce development studies. People are always asking what kind of jobs and how many jobs does the project need? What does the labor force look like now in terms of being able to supply those jobs? And then how can we make sure that ultimately we're optimizing the opportunity for local jobs? This slide shows us the jobs per each phase of the project. So in the pre-construction phase, we have 200 direct staff. We anticipate 180 of those will work out of the Center of Expertise, and a further 20 will work on site at the DGR. There's also the indirect jobs. So in the first phase of the project, we have to build the COE as well as some housing. So there'll be some trades associated with those two activities. In construction, we are joined by 430 trades, 300 surface trades, and 130 miners. These we anticipate will be, for the most part, fly in, fly out, or drive in, drive out. And currently in the conceptual design report, which is a source document for project description used to inform the studies, there will be a camp, and that camp will be located near the Revel site. By the time we get to operations, we'll be looking at 700 employees. And there's on the slide here, you can see the types of, this is not a comprehensive list, but it is illustrative. And we anticipate that the first wave of workers will, by and large, reside in Ignace. But by the time we get to the operational phase, that the employees will be spread out more evenly across the LSA. These job classifications come from the conceptual design report that was published in September of 2021. It's an engineering report, and it lists the classification of jobs required for the project as derived from the National Occupational Classification, or NOCS. So it includes, for example, engineers, environmental scientists, geologists, robotics specialists, administrators, managers, transportation, heavy equipment, trades, etc. What the study showed us is that of these job classifications, the current jobs in the LSA, the local study area, represent about 23% of total jobs. So there's an alignment there. That's in real terms, that's 2,400 jobs. By comparison, and we go back to the regional study area, there's 164,000 jobs in the broader area that actually match these occupational classifications, and that represents a 26% of their job pool. So it's roughly equivalent. However, as we all know, there's a real shortage and competition for jobs of this nature. So where there are positions, those positions are filled. However, the good news is we have time. We have 10 years before construction to actually build up the local workforce in the respective categories. The study also outlines some key findings for the entire local study area. There's common aspirations to retain young people, expand the population, and employment and commerce. Without the project, the population is expected to grow modestly. The proportion of Indigenous population is expected to grow faster than the non-Indigenous population. Labor force possess skills relevant to the project, but there's a high demand for that labor force, and it's taken up. And there's a strong, dedicated network of economic development organizations, as well as industry and educational partners, which present an opportunity for us to work together. So we will need to focus on sourcing the trades for the project well ahead of the need. We will have to recognize that the labor force is aging, and there will be retirements, and therefore we need to be building that pool of labor behind those retirees. And most importantly, and we all know this, there's a real challenge with housing of all kinds in the area, and that becomes a bottleneck or a barrier to attracting and retaining labor. So that's an issue that needs to be looked at. The study then presents some options in terms of a focus for building the labor pool. It includes investing early in early education, in particular promoting STEM, which is science, math, engineering, and technology in both primary and secondary schools. Another option talks about enhancing post-secondary education and training, and making sure that students who are in high school are aware of the opportunities that are going to be needed by the project, so that they can begin to shape their own career aspirations and tracks towards those opportunities. We also talk about making sure that people who are currently underrepresented in trades or STEM are identified and provided support to pursue those fields, namely women and Indigenous people. And then for those youth who are not career tracked into professions or trades, they may be more inclined to look at business opportunities. So thinking about youth support, entrepreneurship support. Key takeaways from labor. The direct workforce will become resident given the longevity of the position. We need to focus on building a local workforce. There's an opportunity to educate youth on the project early. The project is a stable source of skilled employment that can support residents and workers and be a catalyst for new training. And labor is needed for construction. The labor needed for construction will be largely rotating shift workers traveling in from other areas. So the next series of slides focus on supply chain. There's an economic development study that pulls together all of the economic streams. This one focuses on the supply chain, this presentation, and it looks at what goods and services the project may require. What does the baseline look like now, and how do we get businesses ready to benefit from the project? This slide shows you the types of goods and services that will be required by the project. Excuse me. These are the direct goods and services. So we've got a number of commodities, we've got equipment, we've got construction and maintenance and operation. In addition, there'll be a number of businesses that come about as a result of what we call induced economic development. So with a growing population, we're going to know we need accommodation, we need grocery stores, we need clothing, services, etc. So there's opportunities associated with that. I'm sorry, my voice is cutting out on me here. So this slide shows us the concentration of business activity in the local study area and the regional study area. Summary of the characteristics of the study area: historical resource-based economy, boom and bust cycles. Tourism recreation is a focus, strong pride and connection to the environment. Many small businesses, with public sector being the largest employer. Travel to other communities for household needs is very, very common for services, healthcare, and recreation. There are challenges in the supply chain that we have to face and address in our options. How are we going to grow our local businesses? How do we attract new businesses? How do we make sure that we have accommodation and housing for those workers? This slide gives us just an illustrative example of opportunities for business development in the various phases of the project. So we have road construction, site preparation, COE, construction, housing. We've got underground mining and construction, facility development, camp services, food, and trucking. During operations, we have continued trucking and equipment, progressive land reclamation, and municipal infrastructure maintenance during operations. There are a number of options in the study. You can see them on the slide. In terms of the kinds of things we can do to grow the local supply chain, including procurement policies, joint ventures, and support for businesses. The key takeaways from this study are that the project can be a catalyst for building and diversifying the local economy. However, we need to work together, that is NWMO, municipality, and businesses, to get ready. The last study that I'm going to present is a tourism study. And again, the tourism study, again, oh, I should mention that Mike Wakerly from Urban Systems is presenting tonight on the full presentation on tourism on a webinar at the CLC, IGNIS CLC. And so it would be a good opportunity to get the entire study if you're interested. But I'm giving you a snapshot. It's what does tourism look like now? Again, what are the opportunities presented by the project? And what are some options to leverage those benefits? So on this slide on the left-hand side, you see the 13 regions. I mean, the Ontario government divides Ontario into a number of regions. Here we have 13 series of regions, A, B, and C. The data collected around this study, the tourism study, focuses on 13C, where IGNIS in the area sit. And on the right-hand side on this slide, you see the 4 tourism associations that promote tourism in the area. Sunset County promotes the 70,000 lakes and rivers and focus on hunting and fishing. In a Northern Ontario tourism study, it found that tourism generated 9.2 million visits and 1.6 million tourism receipts, or billion, sorry. Destination Northern Ontario survey found that middle to high household incomes, that is 40K to 250K, were mostly interested in participating in outdoor activities. And some of the challenges we all know associated with tourism are attracting new markets, linking tourism to municipal economic development, and meeting core skill requirements. We did in the study look at some of the things that Dryden had to offer in terms of tourism, as well as its own aspirations to address those challenges. The graph on the left shows you visitor origins, and notably the other Canada in the light blue. A large portion of that we would anticipate to be representative of visitors from Manitoba. They say that Kenora's population doubles in the summer as a result of people coming to the Lake of the Woods area. And the pie in the yellow, it really by and large represents American tourists. The graph or the table on the right, it was done as a result of a survey where people were surveyed to see what their top reasons for coming to the area were, and this is shows the ranking of those reasons here. The urban systems who did this study used a very interesting technology where they use cell phone data tracking. So what you see on this graph in terms of visitor origins, each red dot denotes where a cell phone passed through Ignace area, so through the LSA, spent most of its nighttime in a given year. So in other words, their homes where they were originating from. So you can see that there's a lot of people from that heavy concentration south of the border. So the two changes that drive changes to tourism are population increase as a result of the project, as well as the center of expertise. So we anticipate, or the consultants that did this study anticipate that there will be an increase in visitors as a result of those two drivers of change, which in turn will increase the and improve accommodations, restaurants, wayfinding infrastructure, and information centers. In the study, I think there was a survey done to see what the reasons were that people came to the area. And the three reasons were family and friends, leisure, and business, and with family and friends followed by leisure being the top reasons for visiting. So with more people living there and more people coming to visit family and friends, that will be a key driver of change for tourism. The graph on the right shows you the number of nights people stay in the area. And you can see that the overseas folks tend to stay longer in the area. With the COE, there's an anticipation that there'll be an interest in niche nuclear tourism, and we will be attracting more people on that yellow pie graph, national or international interests. And there's an anticipation that there'll be longer stays as a result. Similarly, there'll be an increase in spending. With more visitors staying longer, spending will also increase. And the highest categories of interest of spending are anticipated to include accommodations, food, recreation, and entertainment. So the graph on the similarly, the graph on the right shows you spending in 13C according to US, overseas, Canada, and Ontario. You can see that the Americans have the biggest spend in the area. I'm going to just talk a little bit about the Center of Expertise. As I said earlier, this will be built in Ignace, and there's currently there's been some engagement that's gone on over the last couple months to look at what people's visions are for the center. And my understanding is there will be a new rendering to replace the one shown here for the center coming out shortly. So the anticipation is that with this attraction in Ignace, people will stop to visit the facility, that there will be an interest in tours and learning about the DGR. And in a complementary fashion, there's an opportunity to offer other kinds of tourism activities such as night sky viewing, expanded trails, and science-based activities. So in other words, it becomes a destination for education as well as complementary tourism offerings. Lastly, the study looks at potential risks the risk is that people who are coming to fish, they may be impacted by misinformation, or they may be uninformed about the project and about nuclear. So, that it's going to be really important to make sure that there's good, sustained education and learning around nuclear and the project in general. One of the things that the tourism study has in it is a series of case studies, which are quite interesting. And one of the case studies that we looked at was the Finland experience, where they have a visitor center, much well, with a whole bunch of displays and primary function around educating people about the nuclear industry as well as their waste facility. And they have an extremely high demand for tours. And there's a lot of international attention and interest in coming to visit that facility. So it's an interesting case study. It's comparable. The key takeaways overall from the study, the economics cluster of studies, is that the project will be a catalyst for economic growth over a long period of time. That gets us around the boom and bust cycle. There will be economic diversification and skills training benefiting all. And we will need to work together on shared interests in order to maximize the economic effects in the LSA and in the Northwest. And finally, recognize the importance of ongoing education, research, and dialogue. I'm going to end with this slide. And this slide shows you the list of studies that are complete or almost complete. And you will see the ones I focused on as amongst those. Again, I just want to remind people that tourism study is being presented at a webinar tonight. And the studies that I presented today in a summary fashion, the experts that authored those studies will be available on a panel for further questions and consideration following the webinar on tourism. We also recently launched a open house, virtual open house, and it has in it right now the studies that have been done up until July, including the ones I've just spoken about. And the idea is that we would be updating that VOH once all the other studies are done.